When you think of Greek mythology, there are some pretty big names that come to mind. But today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating and honestly most misunderstood figures of them all, Ares, the god of war. Okay, so think about it. Ancient Greece was a culture that basically worshipped its warriors. Battle was glorified. So you'd expect their god of war to be the most popular guy on Mount Olympus, right? Well, he wasn't. Not by a long shot. So that's the big mystery we're unpacking. Why did everyone, and I mean everyone, seem to hate this guy?
To figure this out, we're going to have to build the case against Ares, starting with the testimony of the gods and mortals who actually had to deal with him.
I mean, it doesn't get much more damning than this. This quote, it comes directly from his own father, Zeus. After Ares gets wounded in the Trojan War, he goes complaining to his dad, and Zeus offers zero sympathy. Instead, he just unloads on him, telling him he's the most hated god of them all. He even says that if Ares wasn't his son, he would have been chucked into Tartarus ages ago. Ouch. You see, to really understand the Greek perspective, you gotta know they actually had two gods of war. Over here, you had Athena. She was all about strategy, knowledge, and cunning, the smart tactical side of a fight. And then you had Ares. He was just the personification of pure, uncontrolled rage, bloodlust, reckless impulse. The Greeks respected a good plan. They were terrified of mindless, chaotic violence. And that fear went all the way down to the mortals. And for a really good reason. Ares was a terrible god to worship. He wasn't fighting for you or your city. He was just fighting for the love of destruction itself. He was even known to switch sides in the middle of a battle just to make sure the bloodshed kept going. Now, the one big exception? The Spartans. His brutal nature really clicked with their culture, and they were one of the few groups who actually gave him the time of day. So, on top of being deeply unlikable, Ares also had a pretty terrible track record. His whole charge and screaming approach often ended in his own complete and total humiliation. Get this story. When he was a young god, he was causing so much trouble that these two giants, Otis and Ephialtes, decided they'd had enough. They caught him and unceremoniously stuffed him into a big bronze jar, and he stayed there for 13 months. He was completely helpless until Hermes finally came and rescued him. It's hardly the epic tale you'd expect from an all-powerful god of war.
But his most famous humiliation? That has to be his affair with Aphrodite, who, by the way, was married to his brother Hephaestus. When Hephaestus found out, he didn't challenge Ares to a fight. He was smarter than that. He used his skills to forge this incredible, nearly invisible and unbreakable net. He caught the two of them in the act. And then, to really twist the knife, he invited all the other gods to come and laugh at them. That pretty much sealed his reputation for being a dishonorable fool.
So the case against him seems pretty airtight. He's violent, disloyal, reckless, and constantly getting shamed. He really sounds like just a simple villain, a one-dimensional brute. But is that the whole story? You know, it's really not. If we dig just a little bit deeper, we find a whole other side to the god of war, a far more complex one.
This is where the whole story starts to shift, because beneath all of that bloodlust, Ares could show moments of incredible loyalty and protection, especially when it came to his family.
Check this out. Poseidon's son attacks Ares' daughter, Alcippe. Ares sees it happen, and in a fit of pure protective rage, he kills the attacker on the spot. Well, Poseidon is furious and demands a trial, what some people call the very first murder trial in mythology. The gods all gather, they hear the case, and their verdict is unanimous. Ares was justified. He's acquitted. This act of being a fierce, protective father is completely at odds with how he's usually painted. And this internal conflict, it's perfectly mirrored in the children he had with Aphrodite. With her, he fathered Deimos and Phobos, that's terror and fear, along with Adrestia, the goddess of revolt. But from that very same relationship came Harmonia, the goddess of harmony, and Eros, the god of love. His own family tree embodies this clash between war and love, chaos and concord. So let's bring this all home. Let's finally resolve the mystery of why this god of war was so hated and what his complicated legacy really means for us. All right, here's the final answer. The ancient Greeks didn't hate Ares because they hated war. They hated him because he represented everything they feared about it. He wasn't the god of glorious strategy and noble victory. That was Athena's job.
No, Ares was the divine embodiment of the pure, uncontrollable, and frankly terrifying bloodlust of battle that even a warrior society was deeply afraid of.
And yet, for all that, his impact has lasted for thousands of years. The hill in Athens where he stood trial became the Areopagus, or Hill of Ares, and it was the city's highest court for centuries. The Greeks looked up at the red planet and named it for him because of its color, a name that stuck. And maybe the biggest twist of all is that the Romans took this hated Greek figure and they reshaped him into Mars, a deeply respected and central father figure in their culture. So this leaves us with one final thought. Ares basically served as a vessel for all of ancient Greece's anxieties about its own violent side. And it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Does every culture in its own way create a figure to embody the very parts of itself that it's most afraid of?